Allow me to start the second session formally, PGRs from or focusing on the Global South, challenges and solutions. Before I start inviting speakers, allow me to say a few words about how did this idea come to my mind? Why is it important for PGRs to share their research and talk about that? Most of this has to do with my own experiences when I started my PhD. I don't know about other people's experiences, but throughout my PhD journey, I felt like very few people care about what is happening in the Global South. This is my personal experience. That can be, you can completely disagree with that. And I thought, at that time, I was thinking that what if I'm given any opportunity, what I'm going to do with that? So there are two options, go back or to respond to that challenge. Some people respond through protest, as we have noticed recently. Some people respond through offering solutions, going beyond making noises. So it's the later that I went for. That's the choice I made. And that is why I started thinking about the PhD, weekly PhD in progress session. Almost 33 jurisdictions we covered during this PhD in progress sessions. 1,233 participants in all these sessions. 37 countries of origin of people who participated, and around 77% of them were females. Bear this thing in mind, a lot of talk is about females in the global north. This network promoted females in the global south, gave them opportunity to lead, not only to participate, which means we do believe in people from the global south as players, not as spectators. And most of the time people, they try to portray your position as being spectator in the game as something equal to inclusivity, diversity, which is fine, it's good. But our understanding goes beyond that thing. I think I would always choose leadership. Why they should not be players in the game instead of being there and clapping and appreciating other people's achievements, which, by the way, based on knowledge production about developments in the global south. Allow me to invite first guest speaker, Saloni Pradhan, PhD candidate, School of Politics, International Relations, University of Leicester, and she's also a very active member of the Global South Network. Over to you, Saloni.
Thank you so much for organizing this as well and giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm a PGR at the School of History, Politics and International Relations, and my project is on Hindutva nationalism and political identity in youth of India. And I'm planning my field work currently, and I'm hoping that works out. Overseas field work, one of the biggest challenges, I think, trying to figure out how to get the ethics application done and work through planning your travel and things like that. That's it. So I have a few talking points and I'm going to go through them. So the first thing I as a PGR felt when I first came here is that my project or the topic that I'm working on might be undervalued or undermined in a space that is very Western academic centric. And I haven't really felt that over here, but it's a constant fear that is my project meeting certain standards of international academia? Am I on path to doing something that's actually meaningful and contributing something to the larger space, not just the localized narrative of Hindutva nationalism. But I'm sort of getting there, and which again brings me to the second point, that's imposter syndrome. And I think that's a universal thing, that's not just me, at least I hope that's not just me. You feel like you are not meant to be here, especially when you see other PhD students reaching certain milestones that you yourself haven't reached. You first deal with academic jargon when you first come here. You try to figure out different academic writing styles. Academics in India and academics here were very different. You have to completely relearn what you thought writing a project or writing a certain paper was like. And I'm glad the university provides a lot of resources for you to learn this. So I'm getting there. And another thing, the PhD in progress sessions have helped me understand that it's not just my project that I'm sort of underconfident about. Others are doing similar things. They receive good feedback and they are actually contributing to the larger narrative. And I think I can do the same thing going ahead. So I'm glad to be part of something like the Global South Network, and that's about all I have. But thank you again.
Any questions do you have for us?
I'll use the opportunity as supervisor's privilege.
Yes.
But I think I really resonate with what you say about whether Hindu nationalism and democracy in India is taken seriously. I mean, I feel as though we're constantly in this media storm, quite rightly about, Trump and him undermining American democracy, just taken very seriously and so on. But we've had almost a decade of Indian democracy being routinely undermined in some might argue much more fundamental ways than the US democracy has. And it's quite different to make those connections. I mean, if you were trying to convince, audiences in the global north that this is important, do you think there are lessons to be learned from India that could be applied to the United States or, the rise of the far right in France? Is that the hook that we need to try and go for?
I think so. I mean, that's what I'm aiming at in my project to figure out, especially given that in the recent elections that have happened in South Africa, France, and other countries, the youth have been a major population that have sort of leaned towards the right. And an understanding of why that happens, what are the aspirations, and what sort of a national identity that youth want to conform to is necessary. And maybe I can just hope that this project sort of lends to the larger idea of youth identity and political identity.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next guest speaker is Steven Kaum, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She's a PhD student from Department of Film Studies, University of Leicester. Steven.
Hey, thank you for Nima. Okay, hello everyone, it's very nice to meet you here. My name is Yuan Gao, the first year PhD student in the Department of Film Studies at the University of Leicester. Thanks to the Global South Network, it's a great opportunity to share my PhD journey with you. I started my PhD at September 2023, and it's also my first time living and studying outside China. My PhD project is the recreation of female Star Wars spectators, fan fiction and fandom community, a research into the combined discipline of film studies, cultural studies, and gender studies. My study so far has been well supported by my supervisors and the department. Although we're a small department, each academic staff and PGR has a different focus. We look at film studies from a broader perspective, not just a work of art, but as a cultural phenomenon to be studied in depth and across disciplines. Beyond the academic studies, we also have opportunities for professional practice. In 2024, our Department of Film Studies and the Department of Media and Communication will host the first Festival of Media Stories at the University of Leicester. Our PhD students are in charge of the judging panel and act as festival workshop leaders, such as editing and photographing. It's a great experience if we want to choose an industry job after graduation. Overall, most of my PhD journey is kind of awesome, but as an international student from East Asian country, the opportunities and challenges are coexist. As an example of my own research, I'm studying the female Star Wars fandom. The number of female Star Wars fans in China is not large, but it is enough to become a specific cultural phenomenon. However, Star Wars as a globally famous science fiction cultural phenomenon, it belongs to the mainstream culture of Western countries, and there is not a huge and enthusiastic fan base in East Asian countries, especially in China. My opportunity is to conduct my research in the UK, a country with a stronger ethos, and receive feedback from a Western context. Most importantly, I want to contribute my findings to a research field with few Chinese scholars. Like I used to present my research in the weekly PhD in Progress seminar held by GSN, I got feedback from peers and academics beyond my discipline, which allowed me to understand how my research project is perceived by people who are not experts in my discipline. Also allowed me to identify the potential problems that may not fit into the broader logic. However, my challenges are obvious. Because of the language and cultural differences, I need to make more effort when analyzing previous research in the second language. When I attended conferences, explaining my research and responding to audiences' unexpected questions are become equally difficult compared with preparing a presentation. Also, the cultural differences can lead to misunderstandings and feelings of isolation when overcoming cultural shock when feeling homesick. Conducting research in a cultural environment I was unfamiliar with required an adjustment process. So, living in a Western country has brought me many challenges that I believe every international student will encounter. Overall, how to complete my studies and self-care in a place where the culture and environment are very different from my home country is something that I need to continue to overcome. I hope that in the future, more community and research networks will enable us PhD students from overseas to communicate better, make friends, and spend our PhD journey together. Thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you. Any question? In that case, let's move to our next guest speaker. Thank you very much. Thank you. Isabel, are you there? It's your turn. Can you switch on camera and mic?
Great. So our next guest speaker is Isabel Webster. She's PhD candidate, School of Modern Languages, University of Leicester. Over to you, please.
Hello. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. So as Norman said, my name is Isabel Webster, and I work in the Modern Languages department, specifically in Latin American Studies. I started my PhD in January, but before that I did an MPhil. So I've been a PGR for a couple of years now, and yeah, whilst I have current experience of doing a PhD, I also have the benefit of hindsight looking back at my MPhil project. Personally, I really enjoy research. I find it a rewarding and fulfilling path. There are some challenges though, some of which I think are a great opportunity for us to grow, others of which are things that maybe could be mitigated to make our lives a little bit easier. So yeah, I'm gonna kind of focus on three main challenges that I've identified today and talk through some possible solutions. So the first one I wanted to talk about was resources, sort of acquiring sources, primary and secondary. Certainly, when looking at certain sources, they can be really kind of difficult to get hold of in the UK, especially if they're kind of specific to certain countries. like I said, I work in Latin American studies, so yeah, lots of the sources might kind of be specific to Latin American countries. I remember a specific example of a film that I was really struggling to get hold of. I kind of looked online as my first port of call, but I couldn't get a hold of it. And in the end, I wound up working with the acquisitions team in the library, and they were able to acquire a VHS tape of the film, and I believe it was the only copy in the entirety of the UK. And I managed to get a VCR player in order to kind of watch this film. So I would say that in terms of kind of solutions for that, it's about, you know, institutions continuing to invest in libraries, and continuing to signpost that things like the acquisition team is a resource that that students can use to acquire kind of some more niche sources. I would also kind of add that acquiring resources can be pretty cost intensive. So another example is, like, at the moment I work in literature, and recently I was acquiring a book of poetry and wound up kind of shipping it in from Argentina, which obviously is a little more costly than if I were shipping something in from Britain. So whilst we have lots of kind of pots of money for extra training or supporting researchers who are going to conferences, who are travelling, I do feel that perhaps some investment in pots of funding pots for acquisition could be something interesting to consider. The second area I wanted to kind of talk about was some like difficult subject materials of our research. So at undergrad and on talk courses, there has been a lot of focus recently on projects around kind of sensitive or potentially triggering materials. But as researchers, we can't always be pre-warned about whether the materials we encounter are going to be potentially quite triggering or heavy. So for me, for example, my last project looked a lot at death studies, and I found myself getting quite caught up in how heavy some of the materials were that I was dealing with. So I think that really kind of like extra training for PhD students around these heavy, difficult materials, sort of helping to give coping strategies, dealing with processing emotions around this, and looking at how students can work with supervisors around work that is maybe triggering, or, you know, spending like extended periods of time looking at heavy, difficult subjects. And then the final point I wanted to raise was in terms of looking at, again, so kind of linked towards mental health, I would say that the majority, if not all, PhD students struggle with mental health at some point. I think personally one of the biggest challenges of the PhD is how strong a relationship you have to have with yourself. So for example, in a normal job, if you have a colleague that maybe you're not necessarily getting on with, at least you know that at the end of the day, they're not going to follow you home. Whereas in a PhD, you know, you do follow yourself home. So I think, yeah, it can be, PhDs can be stressful. They can be quite draining, quite lonely. And I think that, yeah, definitely there's been an increase in conversations around protecting researcher mental health. But I think that maybe more could be done, more investment in counselling services, for example, because not everybody has the same support network at home. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions for Isabel? Well, in that case, let's go to our fourth presenter, one of our own, Cassandra Silcourt, PhD candidate.
Morning, thank you for having me. I'm Cassandra. I am a GTA in the law school, so PhD/teaching. And I have 3 points to make about challenges and solutions. My research is putting how the law interacts with Caribbean communities into context by looking at the Windrush scandal. While I am a part of the Global South, there is a part of the Global South that is dear to my heart, and that would be the Caribbean, because that's where I'm from. The first point challenge I want to put forward with a solution is the concept of financial equity, and how I want to see that embedded is through contextualizing our admin process. So, for instance, we have a lot of historic legacy regulations that govern academia that doesn't account for having a diverse academic body that looks like the communities that we service. Okay? So how about we look at some of those old regulations and see where there's some wiggle room. Example could be, I come from a professional background and I came to do a master's to go up the corporate ladder some more. I fell in love with academia, did some pro bono work, saw an opportunity for the GTA, didn't want to pay for a PhD, applied, I'm here. Things they don't tell you up front. When you have a mortgage and you do a PhD, stipends are not classed as income by high street lenders. So come time to remortgage, I about had a heart attack because suddenly I am not meeting the mortgage calculator. Now I left the Caribbean and my parents when I was 16, 17. So now having to grovel back to daddy and say, please help me because I decided to be a doctor and you want me as a doctor, however, I'm not meeting the affordability. So contextualize our financial equity when you offer these opportunities to us. A second point, another one there to my heart, is about representation. I don't know if you guys saw a couple years ago, Manchester University, after 200 years, had their first black professor. It's even worse for Caribbean representation, guys. I want people to start thinking about, whoever makes the rules and has the power, start thinking about how we can have some strong mentorship programs, but not with just low-level academics. We want to be paired with the professors from the Caribbean. We want them to tell us about their experiences. We want them to pave the way for us coming forward. And I'm sure anybody in any section of the Global South would want to see that kind of representation for themselves. Yeah? And then my final point is about publishing opportunities. So as baby academics, I am a baby academic, I'm in my first year. We want to see opportunities that's linked to the possibilities of being published. There's a lot of emphasis on being a successful published academic in academia. Where are the opportunities? These opportunities seems to be institutionalized looking in. We want special features featuring the Global South topics. We want opportunities to bid for that. We want to be able to have these special issues on Global South opportunities so that we can put forward our little writings that we disregard because the top end, Cambridge, Oxford, and your likes would not accept our papers. Please build those bridges for us. Thank you.
Hey, any questions for Sandra?
Oh, sorry.
It's my something.
Look at me.
Probably.
Political person, ain't sorry.
Any questions? But in that case, thank you very much.
You know what?
Let's invite our next guest speaker. Who did Margarita Lopez Assumes PhD candidate, School of Archaeology and Ancient History, University of Leicester.
Hello everyone. I'm going to read from the paper because if not, sometimes I get lost in my own thoughts. So Sorry if I'm not looking directly to you, but I'm reading the paper. I'm seeing you from the side. My name is Judith Margarita Lopez Aceves, and my research is concerned with the study of drug culture and its representation in the pre-colonial Caribbean. Specifically, my work aims to examine and identify the intoxicants consumed by the indigenous communities along the Caribbean islands, specifically Puerto Rico, their context of use and how these were part of and creators of their cosmovisions and identity. Today, I want to share some challenges from my PhD, and I'm going to talk about really specific things, so probably they will sound a little bit weird, but it's just context. One of the first challenges I faced was the cost of the UK visa. It was a significant obstacle, but with determination and a bit of creativity in finding financial support, I managed to overcome it with a lot of help. At the end, I did a fundraiser. I was asking for money. I was doing TikToks. I was doing a lot of things to try to raise the money, because when I asked, how can I get money to go to the UK? It was like, normally you should ask your parents, but my parents don't have any money. So I was like, okay, thank you. So I did a fundraiser, and with a lot of help of all of my family, all of my friends, all of the people I knew, I was able to come here. Besides of that, the biggest challenge I had so far was obtaining research samples from Puerto Rico. Dialoguing and achieving a common ground was incredibly complex, especially since no one had successfully obtained a permit to take samples abroad before. The first challenge was that one of the main reasons the director of the collection did not want to lend the archaeological material was that sometimes the objects that leave Latin America and arrive to Europe or the US never come back. This is something that I have also seen with material from Mexico, my home country. But in that moment, I was someone from the global south with credentials from the global north. I realized that studying the global south in the global north is a challenge in itself. And during the conversation, I acknowledged that I knew why she was so hesitant, that I would do the same in her position. But I reassured her that my intention was not to invisibilize more these materials and put them in a random collection in the UK, but that I was going to dialogue with the material with the tools I have available so I could understand their context. She understood and allowed me to study the material abroad, which is currently here at the university. Additionally, in my project, I want to challenge the idea that valuable knowledge only comes from the global north. It is essential to recognize that we do not have the whole picture or the only truth about the topics we research. The global south has a rich history of knowledge production, which has unfortunately been invisibilized. In relation to my topic, I observe indigenous knowledge being neglected just because it is difficult to understand. It doesn't have an English translation, and because what they think is not considered valuable, it's something lesser than. By being aware of the context, we can bridge these gaps and contribute to a more inclusive and comprehensive understanding of our fields. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Judith. Any question? Very good, okay. Please, thank you very much. Yes, let me invite our next guest speaker. Forgive me if I pronounce it incorrectly. Chiai Chang, PhD candidate, School of Museum and Galleries, University of Leicester.
Hello everyone, my name is Jia Yi, and thank you for the invitation. I did my master's here about 4 years ago at our school's Love Museum Studies, and I'm currently in my 3rd year as a PhD student here. My research topic is related to the Communist Party of China and its use as a heritage. Namely, it is about understanding the political dimension and propaganda messages of China's heritage and museums. As a PGR who is from China and researching China in the UK, I would love to share how I coped with some of my challenging experiences through self-reflection and empathy during the past 3 years. One of the most challenging things in my position, in my research is my position. Chinese propaganda is prevalent in museums and any other aspects of China's public domain. Born and raised in China, my upbringing allowed me to be fully familiar with and accustomed to the prevalent Chinese propaganda. And I know most of my audience will be Western people. And so I did need to do a hard work explaining and interpreting all of this, interpreting the Chinese politics and Chinese society. So instead of having a reductive understanding of China's propaganda practice in the heritage and museum sector by simply attaching the label of authoritarian, I hope to understand how it became normalized and try to defamiliarize with it. Therefore, how to maintain the strangeness of normality is the most challenging aspect. It is impossible to be fully objective in this research, but I can maintain the strangeness by constantly reflecting on this research and re-objectivizing myself. Self-reflection of one's position is also a useful solution that I hope to offer to any other PGRs who may face a similar situation. Self-reflection happens in the writing, as our thinking develops along with the writing, while it also happens in self-distancing. I often set a gap day or week to allow myself to forget the things that I just wrote. And during this gap time, I would also read literature in political science and museum studies to assess other people's positions. And then I go back to review my writing to see if I have managed to keep a balanced view when interpreting the political messages in museums, while not simply criticizing them or propagating them. I also discuss with people who may or may not agree with me to avoid being too one-sided. Self-reflection in understanding how politics is projected in Chinese museums doesn't mean a lack of empathy. Having empathy toward the social setting is very important for understanding the diverse, heterogeneous, and contemporary society. This is where I bring my personal experience generated in on-site visits into this research, and I feel I'm writing a thesis which is closely related to me. I conducted the fieldwork based on my observations in museums in China, and during my on-site field trips, I'm indeed traveling across China and to engage with real people and to know real people's lives and their complexity. Museums do not exist in vacuum. Bringing my experiences and observations to the thesis is something that brings humanity to the research, and this is also what attracts me to this research topic. And I sincerely appreciate our school and especially my supervisor's massive support and efforts in having an open mind toward this sophisticated research and always being mentally and physically supportive for me. And thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Jerry. Any question?
Just, I'm curious, like, if you're overly critical of Chinese Communist Party propaganda, is that possibly going to cause trouble for you if you want to go back to China? I know that.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
That's it, yeah.
If you don't want to answer this, it's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm gonna recall some of my previous experiences during my probation about 2 years ago, and that's how people are asking me. So that's why I'm adopting this kind of hybrid approach, which does not involve any human participant in my research observations. I only use like research materials from like official policies from the government, as well as the museum narratives in the open in museums which are open to our publics. So I'm trying to stay a very balanced view of understanding what is going on in China now and how Chinese propaganda is becoming normalized in this society, and what does it mean to our broader audiences in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next guest speaker is Natasha Henry, PhD candidate, School of Arts, Media and Communication, University of Leicester. Please.
Afternoon, everyone. I've listened to everybody's works today. I found it really challenging to think through what were the challenges and solutions, because I'm in the brain fog of my PhD. I'm in my third year and I've got 1 year to go. So to really decipher that was very challenging in its own self. So listening to everybody so far, it kind of like prompted some problems what I had going along the way, which is not on this paper what I'm reading from. So I'm kind of trying to interject it into what I am saying today. So my name is Natasha Henry and I'm from the School of Arts, Media and Communication. My PhD focuses on the production of fashion magazine covers an interdisciplinary study that combines fashion, Black aesthetics of production, capitalism, and all underpinned by relational thinking. Today, I want to share with you 4 key challenges I faced in my PhD journey: managing my dyslexia, feeling isolated, short supervisory meetings, and navigating the ethics application process. I will also discuss the solutions I've created to overcome them. I hope that these insights will encourage those who might be facing similar challenges. So, managing my dyslexia. Having dyslexia adds a significant layer of challenge to already demanding PhD journey. Dyslexia affects my reading, writing, and processing speed, making it harder to keep up with the fast pace of this environment. To manage this, I've communicated openly with supervisors about the ways I learn, process, and produce work. I sought support from the university's disability services and was assigned an accessibility study advisor, Donna Mila. My key challenge is processing thoughts and translating them on paper. By discussing my research with Donna, I was able to record meetings, work constructing my chapters, and a tool I will recommend in addition to assistive technology is Miro. Miro is a visual workspace that can be used collaboratively to mind map, similar to MindView, but more visually pleasing. So this is for anyone who has dyslexia in this space. And the second one is feeling isolated. As we know, the PhD research can often lead to feeling isolated as much as the work is done independently. To combat this isolation, I joined an external group, so not within the uni, that provided online writing sessions twice a week and monthly meetups. These groups allowed me to share my progress, seek feedback, and connect with fellow researchers. And this is a Black group, so everybody in the group are Black individuals, which has helped me navigate racial capitalism, Black aesthetics, and so forth, which my supervisors don't have that level of knowledge. They provided me a sense of community and accountability, making the research process less lonely, helping me to stay motivated, and providing a network of support during these challenging times. My next kind of gripe is short supervisory meetings. Another challenge I faced was the shortness of my supervisory meetings. These meetings are crucial for discussing process, seeking guidance, and addressing issues. However, the allocated time was often too short, usually just an hour, making it difficult to delve deeply into my research. Additionally, understanding my supervisor's expectations was sometimes challenging, especially when it did not communicate in plain language, which combined with my learning needs left me confused. Solution. Oh yeah, and to add to that as well, I've had 3 different supervisors every single year. So I've had to keep starting from the beginning to tell them what my research is. So that's one of the things that I forgot. So the solution is to make the most of the limited time. I aim to be specific about what I want to discuss, although I'm not yet to implement this fully. And there's also always so much to discuss. Preparing a detailed agenda, highlighting key points and questions may help focus the discussion and make it more productive. My final thoughts are supervisory meetings generally require more time. I suggest 90 to 120 minutes. Ethics application forms, I don't know the ones on that, ethics. Oh, sorry. One of my significant challenges was the ethics application process. I found myself struggling due to the lack of clear direction and training provided. There's not training guidance for the University of Leicester. In this situation, I realised the importance of leveraging my network. I reached out to mentors and peers who had gone before the process before, who provided valuable information, documents, and advice. Some of the most helpful information came from universities from other universities where guidelines were readily available. This collaborative approach not only clarified the process, but reinforced the importance of building a supportive academic network. That's it.
Any questions? If you have, you can follow up on directly. All right. Allow me to next guest speaker, Skinner Katapa, School of Population Health Sciences, University of Leicester. She couldn't make because of the reason unavoidable circumstances. She couldn't present. So our next guest speaker is John O.K., School of Criminology, University of Leicester. John.
Good afternoon, everybody. My topic is colonialism, socioeconomic status, and alcohol, understanding the mental health of prison inmates. This is a project that adopts the decolonial perspective in trying to understand, the concepts of colonialism, socioeconomic status, and alcohol abuse. Because starting from the back, alcohol abuse was a creation, or is a creation of colonialism in Africa. Socioeconomic status is also a creation of colonialism. So all of them come together into one block, the colonial era, and then the legacies of colonialism. So in doing that, I'm using the decolonial perspective, epistemology, and then trying to flesh out what I call biopolitics of colonial carcerality. Looking at how the impact of colonial legacies continue to drive the prison process in Africa and the global South. Now, in doing that, looking at, claims of the global North to have a prerogative of knowledge creation and all that when it comes to things like treatment of people with mental health challenges, and then looking at all that, I see it as something that has to do with challenging the concept of modernity, in the real sense, in quotes. So from that perspective, you can understand my project. And then looking at the problems, one of the major problems I have encountered throughout this is my third year, my end of my third year, so I should be submitting my dissertation in about 3-4 months. One of the big problems I've encountered is with the doctoral college. They have a lot of problems with their training programs. People who have come for research degrees are not taught research methods, things like how to conduct interviews, how to do focus groups, and then, how to conduct ethnographies and all that, It's a lot of problem for postgraduate students, postgraduate research students, because if you want to go into the field, you need to be armed properly with the requisite skills so that you can ask the proper questions and get the proper answers, Again, they don't have any training about analytical, what do you call it? Like MVivo, like SPSS, I'm taking, back by 3 months, because they didn't have anybody to train me in MVivo. I had to arrange for my own MVivo training. I had to arrange for my training in archival research. I had to arrange my training in SPSS. These things are not available to postgraduate research students. The softwares, some of these softwares, that's what the word I was looking for them. We need a lot of help, I am very lucky to have very wonderful supervisors who've been helping me with some of these trainings, like my interview, focus group, and ethnography training were done by my research supervisors, the two of them. And but unfortunately, they were busy when I needed to do the archival training and then research training and the in vivo. So I had to pay. I had to go to London, the Kew Gardens to do my archival research training. I had to also pay to do my in vivo software training. So some of those things, many people may not be as lucky as myself, and that's why I think it should be highlighted. The doctoral college should improve their training, the content of their training for postgraduate research students. Another big area where I have a problem is the doctoral college and the immigration advice and compliance team. There's this racism that comes into their mails, always this subtle threat that they take, that you will withdraw your visa or that you will not get extension after your program. For Christ's sake, many of us are not interested in extending our stay here by one extra day. I did my master's here and I wasn't around for my convocation. I finished my program, submitted my dissertation, and off I left to my country. So for somebody to come and threaten me that I will not get extension, it's unfortunate. It's not fair. I think they can do better than that. Thank you very much.
Let's go to our next guest, Roman.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit. My name is Roman. My research was in northern Uganda in a refugee settlement and was about the peace-building contributions of health workers in one health center. And listening to the other presentations, I thought I could highlight maybe one aspect that is a bit specific to my research and my situation. I'm basically a practitioner in development and humanitarian work and do this as a part-time doctorate. So I was already working in the region where I did my research. And the thing that I think I would like to highlight is that I learned a lot about research ethics through the program, which really helped me also for my professional practice. And I think that structures like this network can contribute a lot to also assist and hold accountable NGOs and agencies in the way they conduct research. So during my own research project, I had to get, I think, 3 or 4 ethics approvals from different structures, obviously from the UK, from the university, but then also from a local university to do research in the settlement and so on and so forth. At the same time, as a practitioner, I saw that as NGOs and as development or humanitarian organizations, we have very, very few restrictions in how we carry out research. So I would, for example, have to limit for the university research the people I could talk to, which makes a lot of sense because, for example, I have no training as a counselor. I have no training in working with particularly vulnerable populations. So I only talked to professional health workers. I talked in a very safe environment. I would do that for my research, following all the guidance. The next day, I would be invited to what we call a fact-finding mission with partner organizations. And one really strong experience was that there were three middle-aged men, me and 2 others, that were seated down to learn about sexual harassment in schools. And 3 young girls from the school were brought out to talk to us and give us their experiences. They were all pregnant at a very, very young age. And it, of course, hits you immediately that this situation is not acceptable. This is not something that should be done, right? The university ethics codes and everything we have to go through would have immediately flagged that you cannot bring out these young girls to have to talk to these 3 middle-aged guys about extremely delicate subjects. But it didn't. So I think, yeah, one problem and solution that I see is that in my practitioner role, working with different structures in this field, where we deal with also vulnerable populations, that we should have a lot of information and also, yeah, accountability that comes from structures that have more experience with research ethics and can guide what is good and what is bad and what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And I think in global South countries, in some of them at least, with the power imbalances that exist between structures and between people, all the more I think that there could be an important contribution made by something like the Global South Network and other such structures. So that would be my contribution at the moment. Thank you so much. I'm glad it worked now. It was really a bit weird not to be able to turn on the camera and microphone.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Roman? In that case, let's go to our next guest speaker, and next guest speaker is Santani Bakshi from National PhD candidate, National Law University, Jodhpur, India. She is also an assistant professor there. Santani?
All right. Greetings, everyone. My name is Shantani Bakshi. I'm an assistant professor here. I teach constitutional law. So I'm really glad that Global South Network, of course, under the leadership of Professor Rayat, is undertaking such brilliant initiatives to encourage students who are pursuing their PhD. And considering the fact that we are here discussing the challenges and the solutions that we have faced during the course of our PhD, I think it's very interesting to note how different, because I've been hearing the speakers right from the beginning, and I could kind of gauge how important this exercise becomes for each one of us. However, if I have to talk from the Indian perspective, I think something that becomes a challenge and simultaneously a kind of a solution for me would be time. Because if I have to talk about time as a constraint, we were told, whenever we enrolled ourselves in the PhD course, we were told that it has to be completed within a certain period of time, requires extensive, rigorous research. However, what's the other side of it is that because we are full-time professors and we have 3 classes to take, per day, we spend around 3 hours teaching, which requires around 6 hours of preparation. I think that has become quite a challenge. But at the same time, I have tried my best to identify, a kind of a solution to this problem. So what I've been doing is, since I teach constitutional law, I have incorporated the idea of constitutional convention, which I'm currently working on, because I'm assuming that, all of you who are into this field of law must be having an idea that the Indian Constitution is extremely long, pretty detailed, but there exists a set of conventions which operate alongside the constitutional text. My research is about understanding how the constitutional conventions, which are majorly unwritten, they interact with the written constitutional provisions. Now, due to the paucity of time, what I have been doing is I have incorporated this into my course. The first course is the one that I administer to the first year students, and the second one is to the students of 5th year. So I have been talking about constitutional conventions, and this is my 6th year here. So for the past 5 years, I have been discussing this particular area. And today, I think the amount of passion that I have developed over the years, because when I began my PhD, little did I know about what I was planning to do. I just had a brief idea in mind as to what I was thinking about doing. But today, when I compare the two, I realize that huge difference as far as, when at the foundational stage when I started with it, and today where I have reached in terms of the clarity that I have. And certainly when you explore certain things, you are passionate about certain things, that very well reflects in the kind of work that you have. So it feels a little old because this is my 6th year of PhD, but I would definitely admit that it has been for the good. And interestingly, the place from where I'm doing my PhD, which is National Law University in Kolkata, they have awarded the best researcher award to me. And I feel that, after all these years of hard work, because I mean, when you discuss things with students, when you try and explore subjects, there are such diverse perspectives that you get. I think many of us must be, in a position to understand and acknowledge that how lonely a process a PhD could be. But I have luckily shared this journey with my students, and I have discussed every single aspect that came to my mind, every single idea that came to my mind. And I think it was a kind of a joint venture for us. So I think this is something which makes it a journey. And despite the hectic schedule that we have here, uh, and because I have incorporated it within my day-to-day lectures, I think it was worth it. And I feel very positive about the fact that I have ultimately produced something that is going to be of some help to the ones who would continue with the research. So I think this is something that I'm very, very glad for. And I think another solution, as I would again congratulate Professor Riyat for this, because rarely have I seen people take this pain of going this far, because I've seen him consistently working on this, and he has been interacting with every single detail, posting things and working very hard for it. And I'm very grateful that these solutions are coming up, and we're looking forward to many more from Professor Riyad. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Well, in that case, let's move to our next guest speaker. Shana is PhD candidate, University of Ilorin, Nigeria. Over to you, Shana.
The topic of my research is on challenges to the implementation of disability laws on women and children in Nigeria. When I started my program, it was my intention to go through the program within a very short time. However, just at the beginning of the program, I have gone through so many challenges that have delayed my speech.
Shana, sorry for the interruption. We can't hear you clearly. We can hear you, but the voice is not good.
Okay.
Can you please remove the headset, and if you can...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now it is clear. Please go ahead.
Well, as I was saying, I said it was my intention to go through this program in a very short time. However, I have faced challenges that have caused some delay in my program. One of which has to do with my health, financial support, resources. When I was studying to meet supervisors fell sick and I had to go through surgery. After that, we rescheduled the meeting. After some few weeks, I lost my mom. We had to reschedule again. Now we are waiting for another date. supervisor. So managing family, work, and the program has been a top challenge, and also financial support stated. And before I forget, I'm still in my first year of the program. And also another challenge, in this part of the country, we experience poor electricity supply. So most times when I'm working, there is no light, and the system is not fully charged off. There's also a connection delay to work. Getting resources also a challenge. I work. Then also, I've mentioned the issue of electricity, yes. And also, internet connectivity is very poor inside. So connecting to the internet to get materials or do my research has always been a challenge to me, and this application delay. And this issue of time management, every stage of our work has to be done. And when there is delay in that text, and that's things to me, that's time management. So having said, as I said, my work, the solution mostly have to do with my personally. I have to create more time, program, and deliberate time for the program. People have to collaborate with colleagues of getting resources, materials, research work. Get more with colleagues that have already started reaching out. And we also need, as PGRs, we also need more of mentoring and opportunities as this provided by South to help us in getting through our program. Also need a robust library. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Then in that case, let's go to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to be a part of this great event. So my name is Yusuf Sulaiman, as earlier mentioned, and I'm just going to share some of my experiences in terms of challenges and opportunities. Many presenters have said so many things that are incorporated in what I would have said, so I'm just going to make it brief. I think one of my big experience was, coming from another country to the UK, is the new environment. So unlike many other persons have mentioned, language, culture, and stuff for new people in the UK. So, but how do I think this can be taken care of is by attending events, close and diverse events, where you meet like minds, people of like culture, language, and stuff, and also diverse events where you meet new people, because you don't want to, or let me say, I wouldn't want to come all the way to the UK and then just meet people from my country anyway. So I would want to, as much as I want to meet people from my country or from my continent, I also want to interact with new people so that I can learn even more. So what I would advise is that we need to mix up as much as we need to stand out during our PhD program. Another thing is this imposter syndrome. Many of us have it. Sometimes we have this big idea and we are no longer sure we can, in fact, we are the best person to even push through that idea. We get lost and we feel we probably cannot do what we set out to do because we are not capable enough. How have I navigated this is I looked at it as if I'm just being ahead of my time in terms of the kind of research I decided to go into. So sometimes it's like that for many of us. We're just kind of ahead of our time, and it's very important for PhD researchers to actually be ahead of our time. We lean on the shoulders of scholars, but we need to think ahead. Researching requires looking at what other people have seen, but I mean, seeing it differently. So, what have I done to, how have I been able to navigate through this is by presenting my ideas, disseminating them, and then trying to get validation. Sometimes these things look like not good enough and stuff like that until you hear from people and then they tell you how nice your ideas are. And I want to appreciate the Global South Network where, you know, at some point, I think in my first year, I'm now in my third year rounding up, but in my first year, I think, or my early in my second year, I came here and then I met someone who will eventually become my external examiner. And, you know, what happened was there was a presentation on judicial independence, and then the presenter said, well, there was a question, and it was like, well, the next thing is people should start going empirical in checking judicial independence. And that was exactly what I was doing, using quantitative data to prove judicial independence. So it kind of validated my research, and because I have pushed this out into A-class, A-rated journals, and it's been accepted, you know, this kind of give me the kind of validation that I want, and it helps to navigate through imposter syndrome. And then there is this thing of making a choice between the hard and the easy way when I mean during the course of a PhD research, you know, it's hard to kind of make an impact. It's easy to just do what people have done before and then just bag your PhD. But I think the whole essence of going through a PhD research is to create a new path. It's always hard. So I mean, it's okay if we are just going to scratch the surface and then open up a vista of opportunity for discussion, for later discussion. But it's always interesting to go through the hard part where you actually eventually would be able to make good contribution to knowledge and to scholarship. So for posterity's sake, I say, do it the hard way, but we need to seek help when we actually need it. So we do this with a lot of help. And then finally, sometimes we want to do a lot of things and we don't have enough skills. Like someone mentioned, we are coming from a law background, and then you want to do quantitative or qualitative data research. You need in vivo training, you need training on SPSS data and all of these things. I mean, these are skills that we don't have at the moment, but it's not, I mean, it's not a big fault. We just need to reach out. There are massive resources out there. There's the UK, like I wanted to mention, the UK, the British Library, the Center for Research Methods. There are so many of these. So maybe sometimes we reach out to people who have already gone through this, and then they can point us to the direction. And sometimes it's funding that we need. There are lots of funding opportunities to go through training, even that are not sponsored by your host university, and then you still be supported to go through a lot of trainings. Like I've enjoyed fundings like the Turing grants and a lot of other funding opportunities to help you go through your research in an easier way. So we need to tap into all of these resources, and then again, we need to ask for help when we truly actually need them. And then finally, research ownership. So we have this relationship with our supervisors, and then I just wanted to say, like someone mentioned as well, that they had to change supervisors like 3 times. I also did change, or maybe 2 times. So I actually changed my supervisor as well. And I mean, we shouldn't feel bad having to go through this. It's not because we are not good enough, or we are too good, or the supervisors are not too good are not good enough. But supervisors' role must be clear. Supervisors are meant to guide and mentor us. I mean, they don't own the research. So if we need to move to another supervisor to be able to own our research, then so be it. I think it's okay, and we shouldn't feel bad about that. So eventually, it must. I mean, the supervisor should just guide us to reach a research that is truly ours. So on this note, thank you. I want to thank you all for listening and for this great opportunity of presenting. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, any questions? Please. No. Well, in that case, let's go to next speaker. And the next speaker is Isabel Cortrate, PhD candidate, School of Museum Studies, University of Leicester. Isabel, your mic is on. Yes, we can hear you and we can see you. Go ahead, please.
Great. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this panel. I have enjoyed and related to many of the experiences and challenges shared today. As a PGR from and focusing on the Global South, specifically Bolivia, there's much I'd like to share with you. From the very personal and vulnerable experience of changing country, a continent to do a PhD, to the more academic analysis of the material conditions of doing research in Bolivia while presenting British academic credentials. I would like to talk about both because they are intertwined affectively as well as intellectually through the reflexive questions of how and where knowledge is produced and legitimized. I consider myself an insider-outsider researcher, insider in my country, outsider as a member of the University of Leicester PGR community. So today, with the time that I have, I'll discuss my experiences in this latter position, outsider, where my main struggle, a little bit of an obsession, has been my migration status in the context of the 2020s United Kingdom. As an international student, I have to pay for a visa and national health surcharge, which came up to £2,500 in total upfront, and university fees up to £18,000 per year, 3 times more than British citizens. That being said, I have not personally paid university fees, as they have been waived in my doctoral training partnerships agreement with the university. Though I have a British resident permit, as a Bolivian, I have to apply and spend up to £200 for a visa to enter the Schengen space. This means that to attend any conference or uptake training in continental Europe, so next door, I have to not only spare those £200, but take the time and undergo the less than pleasant visa process. Any type of leave or suspension affects my visa status, which means I have to exit British territory. And this includes sickness and maternity leave. This is not the first time I present these issues. As PGR rep and member of the EDI committee in M4C, I am vocal about this lived experience, as I know that my individual story is silently shared by other PGRs. A few months ago, I raised them to an EDI training convener and was quite surprised when she said that it was the first time someone had mentioned my migratory discrimination to her. In addition to the first-hand institutionalized differentiations that I have given these examples for, there is also an atmosphere built on anti-migration discourse and demagogic politics. Though I have not experienced this firsthand, nor in the university environment, its echoes affect my overall feeling of being welcome in the UK. And it is probably why receiving an automatized email of concern about supervisions and how their absence may affect my visa status provokes anguish and preoccupation in me. Nationality is a legitimized and institutionalized form of discrimination, and this might be why it feels difficult to advocate or question it. I have not found a solution for these perceived and objective discriminations other than what I mentioned before, and which is what I'm doing today, sharing it with other people. with supervisors and university staff so that they understand the different position and pressures that I face as an international PGR. And I must say that I have always found support and understanding when doing so. I also talk about it with colleagues who may share my experience because I hope to become for them, for any of you, someone that makes you feel seen, that you can reach out to, and potentially help me in rendering visible these challenges within the academic sector. And to those of you who may not face them, but are researching the Global South, maybe the question of human mobility will lead you to reflect on the structural limitations some face and opportunities others have to produce and disseminate academic knowledge. Thank you.
Questions for Isabel? Now, in that case, let's move to the next speaker, who is Menaka Canagarajah Kamadi, School of Business, University of Leicester.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity now, Mark. Am I audible to you?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Menaka Gamage, a PGR from Leicester Business School. And let me tell you about my research. I'm doing about the Global South, how the knowledge spill over or the knowledge transfer from South to South companies. That is my research area. And these days I'm in Sri Lanka doing my research field work. That's why I'm coming online today. And yeah, you might have heard about the the specific challenges that we face in Sri Lankan context from the Vice Chancellor in his speech. And apart from the cultural and political challenges that Vice Chancellor mentioned, these days I'm experiencing first-hand challenges when I'm conducting interviews in the companies, in the South to South companies, especially when conducting the interviews. We all know about research ethics. Before we start data collection, we get this ethics approval. So in Western context, they know about ethics and how it works, about privacy, confidentiality. But in South, especially in the research context that I'm working in Sri Lanka, people are not that aware about these research ethics and to what extent we comply with these confidentiality, privacy, GDPR regulations. So when conducting interviews with people, it's they are very reluctant to open up. So it's one of the greatest challenges that I'm experiencing these days when doing my research field work. So my suggestion, the solution that I would like to suggest for the PGRs who are doing interviews in Global South would be to rather than scheduling interviews straight away. Even the potential respondents, they need some time to, build a friendly relationship. So what I do these days is I spend some time to build a friendly relationship with them. Even before I start interviews, I spend few minutes to talk, to have a friendly chat with them. I tell them who I am and what I have been doing and what my research is about. So once that comfortable zone is set, I start the interview. So that is one of the approaches that I'm taking these days to get a better output in the interviews so that they open up and share their experiences. So that is one of the challenges. And the other challenge that I would like to highlight is the funding issues. Last year, I encountered this issue because I had to travel to Sri Lanka to do the data collection. But you know, these days, air ticket is very expensive, so PGRs need support. So what I did was I applied for several funding opportunities, external and internal funding opportunities. Like for an example, there is this internal funding opportunity called SeedCon. I applied for that and several others. But unfortunately, I was turned down and I couldn't get any funding from internal or external. I wrote to doctoral college as well. And the other thing I would like to highlight is most of the funding opportunities that I came across, they do not cover the research traveling expenses. That is also one of the greatest challenges for PGRs like us. So I wrote to doctoral college and they suggested me, since I'm a GTA graduate teaching assistant at Leicester Business School, I can have access to the internal funds. So I wrote to my department head and I was lucky enough to get funding through that. So my suggestion for PGRs who are struggling like me to get funds to cover up their research traveling expenses would be to, always check your emails because time to time, even doctoral college sends us emails about the available funding opportunities, and there are external funding opportunities. You need to keep on searching for them and keep on applying for them. It's difficult, I know, but there are opportunities for us. So that is my experience, the funding difficulties and the interviewing difficulties that I faced during the research field work. So thank you so much, Nauman, for the opportunity, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much, Monica. Any questions? In that case, let's move to our last but not least. Owe Oladeju, forgive my mispronunciation if I'm not pronouncing correctly. PhD candidate from De Montfort University, Leicester.
Thank you, Norman. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Having listened to everyone, it seemed like all my points have been covered already, but then I'll still go ahead to present to just say a few things on what I've written here. Oye Oladejo, and I'm from De Montfort University, the Leicester Castle Business School. My research is on crowdfunding as an alternative finance for SMEs in Nigeria. And SMEs have, for a long time faced financial challenges, and I'm looking at how they can look at, instead of relying on the traditional financial providers who have not been meeting their needs, how do we then shift to alternative options? And that's what I'm looking at. And in this, I'm actually in my last year, and over the years, I think I've come up with a few things, 4, 5, I'll go through it quickly. Financial pressure. I'm self-funded, so at the beginning, I understand the fact that, okay, you have very tight, strict payment plans and all the rest. And I was shocked, or maybe I missed it, that in my second year as well, I needed to provide like half of the tuition in the beginning of the first year. I was imagining that since I'd, covered, for the first year, I would just continue with the payment plan, in the second year. And then I was told, no, at the beginning, you still have to do like half, and then we can talk about the payment plan for the rest of them. Of course, that is a lot of, pressure. Thankfully, I also teach in the university. That has helped in terms of the payment, but I think that there should be some flexibility, to PhD students in terms of course, you have every other thing. You have to do your research, your time constraints, your family as well, kids and all the rest. So that one is there. I think that flexibility, we should have some flexibility with that. Then the second thing is confusion in the early years. I'll say for the first year, I probably didn't know what I was doing. I have very good supervisors, to be honest, but it was like today I think I got it, and then the next meeting is almost like I don't really get it really. And so I struggle with that, and I think that more support is needed. Mentoring, people have talked about mentoring. I know the supervisors try their best, but of course they're also probably burdened with a lot of teaching and all those, but perhaps we can have mentoring schemes such that even PGRs can mentor. If I'm in my, final year last year, I could mentor some of the people, because sometimes your colleagues can even break things down to you more than maybe supervisors, and that has really been helpful for me. Data collection, looking at Global South, for me, I was taking data in Nigeria, and I needed, because I'm also looking at how institutional factors influence, the adoption of crowdfunding, and I needed to deal with, some government officials. And it was, initially I thought, I'll just email and then I'll get data. No, that wasn't going to happen. It took me months and months. I'm doing mixed methods. I was able to get through because I was dealing with the SMEs on, to get the questionnaires, but getting the interviews done was a lot of work to be done there. So I think, again, support. I just got to know about Global South Network. Maybe if I knew earlier, I would have gotten some support, because sometimes maybe getting letters from some sort of network could open doors for you in some places as well, because of the challenges you face in getting data. Then the relevance of our research, I think one or two speakers have mentioned that as well. For example, the data collection was also tough because crowdfunding is relatively new in Nigeria. In fact, as a whole, if you look at even journals, you can only trace it back to 2009, 2010. So again, I go here, they tell me it's new in Nigeria, it's too early to start talking about this, start taking data. People have not even accepted it and all of this. So, but I think that at the end of this, I then don't want my research to end up on the shelf. I wanted to make an impact in policy. I'm looking at institutional factors, looking at regulatory. I want this to, do something, not just have it submitted there and just leave it there. So I think support as well in terms of being able to publish it, to also ensure that it's making a social impact. And the last thing is the time constraints. Like I was saying, I had two children. My second child last one year was about 10 months when I started. She's now 4, and I learned, it was a challenge trying to do all this. And then I started teaching again at the end of my first year. So I had to do everything together. Well, how did I manage that? I learned so hard to be on my back and I'm typing. I like to just walk around and I think whoever needs this, you can do it really. I've come this far. She's 4 now. I'm about to finish and it didn't stop me. So it's very tough, but you can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Owen? Any questions or comments from me?
That's a question.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think the PhDs out there is life beyond the PhD, and that vision of the career development and what you might do beyond it, what you've committed to is interesting. You need to always keep in mind it's not the be-all and end-all of everything. I think 10 years ago, imposter syndrome didn't exist. It wasn't a word that was used really at all. I'm very interested in talk. I've got a number of PhD students I've supervised, 20 from all over the world, and some discussions on what they felt is mentoring proposition would be interesting. I often wonder whether there's enough people from the global north actively researching the global south. Last week I was in Nigeria, the month before I was in India, China, we worked in Colombia, Indonesia. These are projects with funding for overseas partners and also the UK. And I think, to maintain those contacts, those networks, those research projects moving forward, I have to invest 20 to 30 days a year working to collaborate overseas. And during COVID, that dropped a bit, of course, but now it's kind of ramping back up. So you keep in touch with your networks, and then you have good discussions with them. So I don't know if there's enough people really working. We have heard the guy doing humanitarian work. I think traditionally that's what we think. We're going to be working in a developing country, and we're going to be doing humanitarian work. But our projects about renewable energies, our projects about involved partners in university, in the country overseas. And there's some We do field work, so I'm a geographer, and we had some early discussions about geographers, about doing field work, preparing for that, and also qualitative skills. I mean, there's a bunch of human geographers outside of the college, your college, in the College of Science and Engineering, are only qualitative scientists, and they are doing a lot of this, and they're doing field work. So there's also some networks to be made outside of your own college. And then finally, I also work at Space Park Leicester. So if you've not been to Space Park Leicester and thought about how you can engage and utilise with a different set of skills, not just data, but geospatial analysis techniques, then come and visit us. We want more people, more visitors through the door at Space Park Leicester. And I know in the School of Business, there's this big topic around space law. And if you're interested in that, we have, in our lab at Leicester, we have MSCs. We could have another session with the same issues around fees, payment plans for PGT students, international PGT students. And we're just negotiating, especially those on wind industry. Because they've got to arrive and suddenly work out the network of British business to get a placement. And the world is closing in on those students. Now it has to be, it should be paid before it's optional, and some people don't pay. Now it's going to be between 9 and 11 months, and before it was between 3 and 12. Before you could go to anywhere in the world and be a placement, that must be in the UK. These students face great challenges, and I'm always helping them write letters to the administration to extend their payment plans, for paying their fees, and even pay 15% while I'm in industry. 15% of their international fee while they're actually not really at the University of Leicester. And I find it quite incredible. Yeah, talk to geographers. I think we'll have great discussions, and visit at Space Park, and looking forward to more international collaborations.
Great.
Get more people out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so in that case, this was the end of the session. Just to tell you briefly, the next event is the guest lecture of Honorable Justice Ruth Ronan, the Supreme Court of Israel. It is the greatest of my pleasures to host her. On 25th of August, she is going to talk about being a judge in Israel, taking judging seriously. And that is going to be followed by another guest lecture of a judge from Ukraine Supreme Court, subject to the approval. That is going to be held in September on the topic cases related to war in Ukraine going on. Stay tuned. Please feel free to spread the word among the PGRs from or focusing on the Global South. And any questions you have got or any information you need, feel free to write to me at norman.rad@leicester.ac.uk or drop a message at the website. Until next event, look after yourself. Have a great day. Bye-bye.